The airline secret is out. We finally, only because of COVID-19, found out what all of these frequent flyer loyalty airline programs that airlines are giving out are actually worth, because they're worth billions of dollars to the airlines, something that they really never wanted to publicly disclose before, and they had to because of COVID-19. But more importantly for you and I, all of the air miles that we collected over the last 18 months during COVID-19, sitting on the couch, watching Netflix, ordering stuff online, but still spending on the credit card and getting all of these air miles in our accounts, they're in danger of being devalued. Let me explain why. I seem to be stuck on this airline topic for the last few days. Last week I put out a video, here is the link above me, on the best US airlines to invest money in terms of looking at their financial statistics and all the data over the last few months. But today I want to talk about something that's a little bit closer to my heart and certainly I believe yours, and that's what happens to all of these air miles that we accumulated over the last 18 months, and maybe kind of explain the background of how all of these frequent flyer loyalty programs that airlines are running kind of function, because we all take this for granted, right? We collect the air miles, we're happy for the free seat that we kind of get as a reward later on. But few actually stop to think about the circle of all of these miles and who's actually benefiting the most, whether it's us as the consumers or the airline or somebody else. So just a step back here, this whole thing with the loyalty programs, these frequent flyer air miles that started in the 1980s as a marketing trick. Effectively, back then, the airline said, well, let's start these programs. We can give us some points to all of these people that fly with us. Hopefully they'll come back and we'll give them more points and then we'll give them a free seat later on. But over time, this became a huge cash flow for the airlines, a huge source of profits, because effectively, when you think about an airline as a business, you're thinking about two separate tracks. One is flying you from A to B, right? That's a business of large fleets of fixed assets that are really expensive to run, and they don't make a lot of money. Airlines really only make money when the planes are almost full or full. If they're half full, the airline's actually effectively losing money. But the separate track, the second track, is this whole financial light, asset light, scalable type of a business where the airline's effectively using all of these loyalty programs to generate a huge amount of profits. The margins in all of these programs are 40-50%. And the way this works is the airline effectively issues air miles or points, sells them to a financial institution. So somebody like Chase or Citibank or American Express. And then these financial institutions, these banks, then issue credit cards that you and I apply for because we want to get these air miles. And then for each dollar that you and I spend in the store, we get a mile, right? We get a point, or we get 2 miles, or whatever the deal is. And then we go back to the airline and redeem it for a free seat. So that's kind of the circle, right? But what effectively happens here is that the airlines sell these points or these miles to the banks for a lot of money, and the banks then make money by having the merchants give them commissions based on what you spend there. But effectively, during COVID-19, what happened is, previously the airlines never wanted to talk about how valuable these loyalty programs are. But during COVID-19, when all the flying stopped, suddenly all the airlines were bleeding money every single day, $20-25 million a day for the big airlines like Delta and United. And they used all of these loyalty programs effectively as a collateral, as they had to mortgage them to get money either from the government through the CARES Act or through the equity or debt markets, effectively getting capital into the airlines so they could survive the pandemic. And to do that, they had to value these programs and publicly disclose what they're actually worth. So if you look at this first chart I'm throwing up on the screen here, you see that how valuable these programs are. If you look at, you have the 3 or 4 big US loyalty programs here. Sky Miles, that is run by Delta Airlines, is worth about $25 or $26 billion. This is what this loyalty program is valued at by financial markets. And based on this valuation, Delta is able to raise capital. You have AAdvantage from American Airlines is worth about $23 billion. So think about this, $23 billion for the loyalty program by American Airlines, when the market cap during COVID-19 was about $7 billion. Effectively, this is the market saying, we think that your flying business is worth 0, but we think your loyalty program is worth about $23 billion. And then you have United, obviously, with a Mileage Plus program is worth about $20 billion. The trick here, how does this lead to all of these unused air miles that we want to talk about, right? If you look at this other chart, it kind of shows you the liabilities of all of these air mile loyalty programs. So because the airline sells these points, they had to put it on a balance sheet as a liability because somebody at some point later on will come and redeem these points. So you look in 2020, there's about $27.5 billion for the 5 biggest airlines or loyalty programs in the US. That's $27.5 billion sitting on the balance sheets of these airlines. And if you look at this other chart here, it shows you what happened in 2020 versus 2019 and 2018. If you look at the total number down here, this shows you how many of these miles were actually redeemed during COVID-19 in 2020. So you see, versus the prior 2 years in 18 and 19, where typically people redeem about 30% of these air miles, we only redeemed about 11.3% of all of these points or miles during 2020. So this leads me finally to the argument of this video here, and that's to say we all accumulated a huge amount of air miles during COVID-19, during 2020 and 2021. Obviously, that continues. The flying's picking up, people start redeeming, but we have all of these unused air miles in our accounts. And airlines already started devaluing them. And they do this because they need to reduce the amount of the liability that's sitting on the balance sheet for the airline, because that's going to improve their financial results. Right, so if I go back to the second chart that I showed you here, you see Southwest had the biggest growth in this liability from 2019 to 2020. It grew from 3.4 billion to 4.4 billion. That's 30%, a 30% rate of growth from one year to the next. So this liability is a huge deal on their balance sheet. And they already announced, so Southwest announced in April of 2021 that they are requiring 6% more points or miles for people to use when they want to redeem them for a free flight. So that's effectively saying we sold something for X and now we're saying X is worth 6% less. So if there's one thing to take away from this video, that's to say, if you have a trip to book, a vacation, you need to go somewhere over the next few months, use your miles. Don't hoard your miles. Don't keep them in your accounts, because the airlines have so much in terms of liability on their balance sheet that other airlines are likely going to follow Southwest, United, Delta, American, especially American, that their balance sheet is really horrible. They're potentially going to devalue all of these points that you have in your account. So think about it, a vacation to Europe that used to cost 60,000 points or 60,000 miles suddenly will be maybe 70 or 75,000. So all of these air miles or all of these points that you accumulated on your account eventually will be worth a lot less. So go book a trip, go to Hawaii, go to Mexico, go to Europe, travel, go see some fresh air now that we're hopefully emerging from the pandemic, book a trip, but use your air miles. All right. Thanks for hanging out with me. Make sure you give a like to the video if you enjoy this. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet, and I'll see you in a few days.